Christmas. I don't know if we have it back there. Sarah, did we get a little picture of my dog up there? With a picture of Max holding a taxi cab? Or is it not there? It may not be there. Well, he got this taxi cab toy, and he just thought it's just so fun to run around. And there's a little tag on the taxi cab, and it says, if this opens up and things come out, then take away from your pet, because those things aren't good for your dog. I thought, wow, it's just like a real New York taxi. If any of you open that up, don't touch anything in there, it's always not good. As I'm sure you're aware, there are several authors, if you will, of our Christmas experience. Of course, we in the church emphasize quite a bit the birth of Jesus. I'd say we're pretty clear on this point. We say that Jesus is a reason for the season, and we do our best to emphasize the birth of Christ over, say, a fellow in a red suit coming down the chimney. But we know that there have been several other elements that have added to our Christmas celebration. Coca-Cola has iconic Christmas ad campaigns. Perhaps at Thanksgiving you watch the New York parade kicking off the holidays. There are lots of factors that shape our perception of Christmas. And one of the most powerful of these is on television every holiday, and most of us have seen it as a play at one time or another. Of course, I'm speaking about Charles Dickens and A Christmas Carol. We all have our favorite version of the story, but no matter if it is Disney's computer image version with Jim Carrey playing 5 different characters in that, or it's that great version where George C. Scott is Scrooge, they all have the same ending. Christmas morning comes and Scrooge has discovered that he is in fact alive and went through all of that in one night. He speaks to the boy out of his window and sends a goose as big as him anonymously to Bob Cratchit's home. He has enjoyed Christmas dinner with his family, and now it is the day after Christmas, and we have this great little scene. The narrator says he was early at the office next morning. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 No Bob. Bob was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door. He was on the stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. Scrooge says, "Hello, what do you mean by coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time." "You are?" "Yes, I think that you are. Step this way, if you please." Now, I tell you what, my friend, I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I am about to raise your salary. Bob trembled. In the original, he's going for a ruler, thinking he might have to hit Scrooge because he's gone crazy. Scrooge says, "A Merry Christmas, Bob," as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family." And the narrator then has this paragraph. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. I love that. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, shall we say it together? God bless us, everyone. Now, why am I giving you a Christmas rerun? Because I think the challenge before us is to do what Scrooge apparently did. That is, we need to figure out how to keep Christmas also. What is required to take the sense that God's love is near and to share that with others into the new year? Well, Mr. Dickens gave us the perfect 3-point sermon with the 3 spirits, so I thought I would review them and look at them scripturally. And if that changed Scrooge, maybe the same process can change us. Now, it took Scrooge at least 3 strikes of the clock to greet the various spirits, so we can think it was a 3-hour process. I don't know if I can preach that long, but I'll try. See if that helps you. Or I'll go shorter. Is that what you want? Okay. First, of course, was the ghost of Christmas past. Scrooge was that wounded child. You remember he was sent to boarding school, and his sister comes and gets him because their father becomes so much kinder. With that wounded child, he'd known some joy like Fezziwig's employment, but now we see him sitting with a young woman. She is there at the end of their engagement. And she says, "Another idol has displaced me. And if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve." "What idol has displaced you?" he rejoined. "A golden one." "This is the even-handed dealing of the world," he said. "There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth." I love this line. "You fear the world too much," she answered gently. "All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?" "What then?" he retorted. "Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed toward you." She shook her head. Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man." "I was a boy," he said impatiently. "Your own feelings tell you that you are not what you are," she returned. "I am. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you." His first great challenge? Misplaced priorities. It was valuing money above all else. What do we read in the scripture? In 1 Timothy, the Apostle Paul is telling young Tim what really matters. And he has just spoken about the false teachers who think that godliness is a way to make financial gain. It's a good thing we don't have that happening anymore. I'm being facetious there. Paul goes on from there to help shape a better balance. He writes, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root to all kinds of evil." Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And what does Jesus say about this? He goes even further. He says, don't worry about it. Seek first what? His kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. A foundational issue for every person on this planet is this: what do we value? Or as Jesus put it even better, who are you going to serve? Is it God or money? The first way to keep Christmas is to decide that that baby in the manger and the man on the cross and the Christ of the empty tomb, that he matters so much more than what kind of car you drive. Those people you love or that adult child you keep reaching out to means so much more than impressing strangers with wealth. I was thinking about this point, and I was at a stoplight behind a Porsche Carrera 4S. And I thought, I just wonder. So I looked it up. Turns out that little car the guy was driving goes for about $120,000. Now you might think that's a lot of money, but let me tell you, it's well worth it because that car can drive 190 miles an hour. That's just one more example, like we needed another example of how stupid we are. Who in their right mind is going to be able to drive anywhere close to 190 miles an hour? Think about what matters to you. Make sure that you value Christ, that you seek His approval more than anyone else's. That is our first lesson in how we might keep Christmas. The second spirit came to Ebenezer in the form of the large, jolly man. He showed him Christmas present and what was happening right now around him that he had no idea about. We meet Tiny Tim in this segment. We see Bob Cratchit's family. We see Scrooge's own family as well. Some speak ill of Scrooge, but his nephew offers a toast to the man because he has decided he will not give up on this guy. Scrooge sees the odd feature sticking out from the spirit's robe, under the robe, and asks him about these things. And this is what Dickens writes. The spirit moved his robe aside. They were a boy and a girl. Yellow, meager, ragged, scowling, wolfish, but prostrate too in their humility. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand, like that of age, had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out menacing. No change, no degradation, no perversion of humanity in any grade through all the mysteries of wonderful creation has monsters half so horrible and dread. Scrooge started back, appalled. Having them shown to him in this way, he tried to say they were fine children, but the words choked themselves rather than be parties to a lie of such enormous magnitude. Spirit, are they yours? Scrooge could say no more. They are man's, said the spirit, looking down upon them, and they cling to me, appealing for their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both and all of their degree, for most of all beware this boy. For on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Deny it, cried the Spirit, stretching out its hand toward the city. Slander those who tell it ye. Admit it for your factious purposes, and make it worse, and abide the end. Have they no refuge or resource, cried Scrooge. Are there no prisons, said the Spirit, turning on him for the last time with his own words. Are there no workhouses? The bell struck 12. What's the issue here? What's the problem? Isn't it blindness? Isn't it a lack of caring to see what is all around us, to look only on what we wish to see? And what does Scripture say? The story of the Good Samaritan comes to mind, doesn't it? And prior to our hero, the Samaritans, discovering the poor man lying in the road, those noble men of God looked away, they crossed the street, they did all they could so that they would not have to deal with the mess he represented. So the second point is, if you want to keep Christmas, engage, connect, care about the people that are around you, who may actually be grappling with tremendous pain, but you never asked. You didn't care. It was so nice for those of us who had a chance to go caroling last week. And why is that so great? Well, I think because it's an unusual and fresh way to express care. And we need to keep looking for fresh ways to do just that for those around us. I think of Isaiah's powerful words. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger and malicious talk. And if you spend yourself on behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. And the same goes for our society. Ignorance and want are still the children we need to take care of. We still tend to look away. If you're like me, I feel like I have almost no headspace to care about the people of Yemen. But then we learn that mass starvation in that country, that's not a byproduct of war. It is a tactic, and half of the people in that country are starving. And we recoil from this naturally, just as Scrooge recoiled from those two urchins. And we need to do just the opposite. We need to love. And then the third spirit was upon him, the one most feared. And he shows him the crutch in the corner of Cratchit's home, the people going through Scrooge's things and glad to have him gone. No good word is said about him. And Scrooge is finally at the church graveyard, and he asks a question of the unspeaking spirit. "Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point," said Scrooge, "answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only?" Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. "Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if persevered in, they must lead," says Scrooge. "But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me." The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Idolatry, blindness, and now perhaps foolishness. For only in foolishness do we think that we will never pass, that things will remain as they have always been, and we can do something different at a later time. In my pastor's group that I meet with, I was speaking with Steve McLean, and he had something that he wanted me to have. It was a little book called Living Life Backwards. He said, "Take it. I bought a whole case of them to give away to friends." This book is really a study of Ecclesiastes, where his constant cry is how meaningless our pursuits are. The counterpoint to foolishness, of course, in that book is wisdom. We read, "Wisdom like an inheritance." I'm now referring not to the book, but to the Bible. "Wisdom like an inheritance is a good thing and benefits those who see the sun," that is you and I. "Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it." The author's point is that if we know that we die at the end of this play, if we realize that all we strive for will fade away as well, then we start to value things like our legacy and what we truly want to be remembered for. And now you understand the title. If we begin by considering our death, if we think backwards, if we live life backwards, we are sure to live life more wisely. It is the same advice that we learned from that classic leadership book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The very first of those habits was to begin with the end in mind. Now, how does this help us to keep Christmas? By realizing that we must make the most of our time right now. Twice the book of Hebrews quotes a psalm. I'm reading out now from Hebrews. "God again set a certain day, calling it today. This he did when a long time later he spoke through David, as in the passage already quoted. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." God is constantly calling us to follow him today. Every day that we're here matters. Every day he wants us to hear his voice And every day He wants us to open our hearts to Him. So our challenges are idolatry and blindness and foolishness. Our solutions are valuing God, being aware of others, and realizing that we must act today. Thus ends our Dickensian lesson. We finished in a little less than 3 hours, don't you think? But if we are blessed, then the effect can be the same for us as it was for old Ebenezer. We can decide that we will keep Christmas in our heart. We'll be just a little nicer to other people. We'll let them have that parking space they seem to want so badly when we were in that lane, and on and on. Let's take the message of those spirits and the truth of God's Word with us as we journey through 2019. And how else could I end this than to say with you and along with Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone. Amen. Would the ushers please come forward for the offering?